So the concept of hemostasis is really about stopping bleeding. It's, you know, it really, we call it clotting, but it's more than just clotting. It's about stopping the loss of blood. And there's 3 steps to it: it's vascular spasm, platelet plug formation, and then coagulation. Then after that, there's the clot gets removed and the tissue gets repaired, but that's not considered part of hemostasis. An analogy that really works for this is it happened to me one time that the hose that goes from the outlet, the tap on the wall behind the washing machine, to the back of the washing machine, the rubber hose sprung a leak. And water was squirting everywhere and starting to flood the laundry room because so much water was coming out. So when I heard the noise and I went in, I realized what was happening. The first thing I did was I reached over and I shut off the valve. I shut off the tap to stop the pressure. And then I put my thumb over the leak, over the hole, to try and contain it as much as I could until that pressure dropped. And then what I ended up doing was I put a whole bunch of tape over that hole so that I could finish that load of laundry, because I didn't want to wreck everything by letting it sit there. And then after that is when I went out and got a new hose and replaced the hose. So really, our blood vessels are the same. You spring a leak in a blood vessel, the first thing you do is shut off the tap and reduce the pressure, which is by vascular spasm. And this is the thing that actually causes the pain, that stinging pain when you cut yourself. And then we plug the hole with platelets, which is a temporary thing. And then clotting is a more robust, semi-permanent solution to it. And then when you repair the tissue that has caused the leak, then you remove that blood clot. So the vasoconstriction, the spasm, actually happens first, and it's caused by the direct injury. When the endothelial cells are actually damaged, they release chemicals, right? And then those chemicals activate platelets, and then the platelets release more chemicals, and so on and so on. That causes really vasoconstriction locally where those chemicals are. And that's what causes the pain. And then the platelets start to get sticky, and they stick to each other, and they stick to the collagen fibers of the sides of the blood vessel, and they end up creating a loose kind of plug, much the same way as when you wash a pot that you've cooked rice in, the rice grains end up in the bottom of the sink and get caught in the strainer as you're draining the sink, the dishwasher, out of the water out of the sink, and the sink doesn't drain so well until you clear the strainer. It's the exact same sort of thing. It's like each platelet's like a grain of rice. So wherever the blood vessel is injured, the endothelium is damaged, collagen fibers become exposed, and then that attracts the platelets, or makes the platelets that are in the area stick. They swell, become spiky, they release more chemicals, they cause more platelets to stick and release their contents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they cause more vascular spasm and more platelet aggregation, and it's a positive feedback, and it will continue until the bleeding stops. So when the bleeding has stopped, when the plug is actually effective in stopping the blood from leaving the blood vessel, then the blood rushing past the clot actually washes away these chemicals faster than they can activate more platelets, and the reaction stops. But it's a positive feedback. Clotting causes more clotting. So it really looks like, or I'm sorry, platelets cause more platelets. So the damage causes spasm, then the platelets plug the hole, right? And then what we do in step 3 is we have coagulation. We have the clotting. This is when this loose structure of platelets starts to have more structure and more firmness. You need some tensile strength. So what happens is there's a series of chemical reactions, and the blood stops being so liquidy and turns more into a gel. And you all know what blood clots end up looking like. They're kind of like jello. There are proteins, fibrous proteins, that get deposited all through this, and they catch the red blood cells and the white blood cells and the platelets and etc. And really they form this net, and these fibers are called fibrin, and we call it the fibrin net or the fibrin mesh, and it comes from fibrinogen, which is a normal protein. So there's a couple of ways that this happens, and this is somewhat important for a lot of the because so many people are on blood thinners, so many people have clotting issues. Like we try and modify this for people that have inappropriate reactions. And there's kind of 3 phases. So one of the things is prothrombin activator is made, and then prothrombin is then converted into thrombin, and then thrombin makes fibrinogen turn into fibrin and form the mesh. And so what leads to the prothrombin activator are one of two steps. So the 2 pathways that lead to, down here, to prothrombin activator are called the intrinsic pathway and the extrinsic pathway. Now, intrinsic means within, extrinsic means without. It's going to throw you a little bit because it seems backwards, but the intrinsic pathway is blood clotting because of factors that are found within the blood. That's why it's intrinsic. And so what happens is it gets triggered by the collagen at the injury site. The platelets then activate, and they release other things, and it goes down through all of these steps, step 12, 12A, 11, 11A, 9, 9A, 8, 8A, 9 and 8A together make 10, which, blah, blah, blah. They're numbered not in the order that we use them, but actually in the order that they were found, which is crazy. So one of the last steps is 5 becomes 5A, for whatever crazy reason. But the interesting thing is the intrinsic pathway is what causes blood to clot when it's outside of the body. It's when it's why blood clots in a test tube, or blood will clot on the floor if it's in a hemorrhage case, or why it's clotted blood on the steering wheel in a car accident. It's and it's intrinsic to the blood, not intrinsic to the body. It's a slower pathway, but it's a very efficient pathway. The extrinsic pathway is caused by chemicals that are released by the traumatized tissue, not by the blood itself. So the factors come from outside of the blood, and they're the tissue factors. And it's a much more direct thing, that there's far fewer steps to get to the prothrombin activator stage through the extrinsic pathway. So for the extrinsic pathway to work, the blood has to be still in the blood vessel, which sounds crazy. Extrinsic must be in the blood vessel, intrinsic can be anywhere. So once we get down to the prothrombin activator, what happens is this. The prothrombin activator causes a protein that is circulating in the blood, an inactive protein called prothrombin. It's normally present in the blood, and it's ready to go at any given time. And the prothrombin activator actually causes prothrombin to turn into an active protein called thrombin. It's an enzyme. And then what thrombin does is it causes fibrinogen, which is the third most common protein in blood. It's a soluble globular protein, to denature and turn into fibrin, which is an insoluble fibrous protein. At the same time, it causes some factors to make the fibrin stick to itself and stick to the other elements, the other formed elements, and it actually sticks to the edges of the exposed collagen of the broken edges of the blood vessel. So it's a very important thing. And the reason we go through all the steps is that one molecule of prothrombin activator will activate 1,000 prothrombins to become thrombin, and one prothrombin causes 1,000 fibrinogens to become fibrin. So it's an amplifying effect. It's just a very little bit of prothrombin activator will cause an awful lot of fibrin to be made. So the two pathways I've gone over. You don't need to know the details. The salient thing is intrinsic happens in the blood. Extrinsic happens because of the tissue. Most of the time, you can't have the extrinsic without intrinsic working at the same time. But spilled blood will only be intrinsic. So this is explaining that. So then prothrombin transforms to thrombin. Thrombin then causes fibrinogen to become fibrin. And then the fibrin is the structural basis of the clot. It really forms like a trap. And it ends up looking like this. It kind of looks like silly string sprayed all over, and there are white blood cells here, and there are red blood cells, and there's platelets, and all kinds of things, all being trapped by this. And the edges of this mesh, this network, are stuck to the edges of the wound as well. And that's important because the platelets actually have actin and myosin in them, just like muscles do. And after about 30 minutes to an hour, they start to contract. And when they contract, they pull on the fibrin and they tighten the whole thing up, and they squeeze the liquid out of the clot, and the clot starts to become more solid and a more rigid clot. And on top of that, it pulls the edges of the wound closer together to minimize the amount of healing that has to happen to bridge the gap. So the clot retraction happens right after. And oftentimes you cut yourself, first thing you feel is that sting of the vascular spasm. Then you bleed for a little bit, then the bleeding slows, and then the bleeding stops, and then you get this deep ache as the tissue is being pulled. And so an hour later, you get that achy feeling. The tissue is being pulled together. We're also going to see that later that macrophages move into the air and they start cleaning up any debris that happens, but that's part of immunity. So then what happens is the platelets are releasing chemicals that cause the tissue to grow, smooth muscle cells start reproducing, fibroblasts start making the adventitia, the outside coating, endothelial cells start making the endothelium grow, and the walls repair. Now this isn't part of hemostasis now, this is about the repair process after. Then you don't need the clot anymore, so you remove it. And there are basically enzymes that cause the clot to disappear, and we call that fibrinolysis. Again, not part of hemostasis, but more a cleanup that happens after hemostasis. So really, you want the clot to be big enough to do the job, but you don't want it to get too big. So what happens is that all the chemicals, the local chemicals that make this happen, when the blood stops leaking out, when the bleeding stops, then blood flow past the clot actually wash away and dilute the clotting factors, and the clot stops growing. And then what's interesting is that the release of clotting factors actually inhibits the release of more clotting factors. So at the time of the platelet plugs, it's a positive feedback, and then it starts to turn into a negative feedback to stop the continued growth of that. Heparin is an anticoagulant that really inhibits these clotting factors. That's probably the most important one that we actually use. Sometimes we use vitamin E, quinine, various other things, is all trying to stop platelets from forming. So these would be more like what are the blood thinners.